you start to question your value. You start to question your self-worth.
Like, the more money you got, the more successful you are, and most people really do buy into that.
But really, I just needed a break.
What I love is helping people.
I'm Julie Bauke, and welcome to The Evolved Career, a podcast where we help you determine what truly does matter most to you and how it can have a profound impact on your life. Today, we welcome Kathrine Nero. Pulling from her LinkedIn profile, she says news personality, host, and storyteller. But when you ask her, she just says, I'm a storyteller. Welcome, Kathrine.
Thank you.
Well, the reason that I invited you to be on this is I woke up and opened up my Cincinnati Enquirer on July 30th, 2019, and there was a column you'd written called 1 Year Later, There Is Life Beyond TV. And as I read it, I was nodding constantly. I thought your story is universal. Your story is typical. It's painful. It's personal. And yet, here you are in the public eye as a news anchor for 20 years in Cincinnati. When you have a public job, you lose it in a public way. Take us back to that day when everything changed for you career-wise.
Yeah, so it was just a regular old day, and my bosses called me up to their office. I thought it was about something else entirely, something silly and just completely frivolous. And I remember on my way up, this is where it gets really weird because I had no indication that I was going to be fired that day. On the way up to the office, I thought, what if I get fired? And I don't know why that thought popped in my head. No reason.
Had that thought ever occurred to you before?
Not once. There had been some moving around.
Sure.
And it's an industry that has a lot of moving and shaking, so there had been some movements in that direction. But I never thought it would happen to me. But I had that thought, and I thought, well, if it happens, just don't cry. That was basically how, and I didn't. It was close, but I didn't. But yeah, it was a complete and total surprise. But I don't know anybody who gets fired, and I've talked to a lot of people who've gotten fired who were like, yep, totally was expecting it.
Yeah.
So it does come out of the blue.
It does. And sometimes, I've worked with people who've lost their jobs for probably 20 some years now. And with some of them, they'll look back and say, there were these weird things that were happening that in retrospect, maybe I should have seen it coming. But I think the majority of people are surprised because, like you said, it happens to other people. You're thinking, this can't happen to me.
Right. And frankly, I was the only anchor on the morning show. And I thought, well, I'm pretty safe. I got this. But that wasn't the case. And so, it was surprising. And the next 24 hours are kind of a blur.
Yeah. What'd you do first after you walked out of the office?
Weirdly, I came downstairs and somebody's like, hey, can you go do this story? I'm like, you know what? No, I can't, because they obviously had no idea what was going on. I called my husband. I called my best friend. I called my former co-anchor who had already been fired several months prior. And it was just a blur of talking it out and what are we going to do and what's our financial situation and how are we going to pay the bills? And it was just, you go up and down the roller coaster.
Sure.
Mainly down at that point, to be perfectly honest.
Exactly. And the roller coaster word is one that is used a lot. You'll go from feeling like I got this to I'm going to live in a cardboard box. Yeah. Really Absolutely. In about 2 minutes.
And it's little things like we had just put our daughter in a private school for the first time ever and just decided we were going to pay tuition all at once the next week.
Right.
It's like, wait a minute. What? All of these silly decisions. We were talking about adding a room onto our house. Nope, we're going to wait on that. All of these things. And it's like, I remember silliest things like I bought a Fitbit, that counts your steps and all of that. Yes. And it was a little more expensive than the one I had. And it was kind of a splurge. We're talking like under $200.
Yes.
And I'd bought it like 2 weeks prior. And I remember thinking, why did I buy that Fitbit?
Yes.
That's $200 I could have in my pocket.
Right.
And it was like, that's not going to make or break anything. But it was those little things that just throw you off and that just kind of bring you back to the surface of, here we go. What's going to happen next?
Yes. And it is, I wrote a book called Stop Peeing on Your Shoes, Avoiding the 7 Mistakes That Screw Up Your Job Search. And one of the things I talk about in there is the first thing that we do when we get the news is we want to feel better. And so we call the people who we know love us. Could be a former boss. It could be someone who's been your champion or your mentor, because we want them to tell us that we're right and whoever made this decision is wrong. And we just start reaching out.
Mm-hmm.
And in a lot of cases, people do that to their detriment
Mm-hmm.
because we're not ready to have those conversations. And one of the things that in your column that you wrote is, if someone had offered me a job, any job, in those first few weeks, I probably would have taken it,
Mm-hmm.
no questions asked. That's that reaction to that emotion. So what were those first couple weeks like?
Well, it's just like you said, you've had a paycheck your whole life. You've worked in this, you get the paycheck every 2 weeks, you put it in the bank, all as well. And then knowing that that's not going to be there, you're like, wait a minute, what do I do? And, and I also wrote in the column how this was the only thing I ever wanted to do from the time I was a little kid. And so that's another like loss of a dream. So it's not just the job. It's, oh man, is my whole career over? Should I do something completely different? And if so, I haven't even given a single thought to what that might be. So all of that kind of rolls itself into this emotional roller coaster. We're back to that word where you just want a job, you just want to work, you just want to do anything. It's kind of like a rebound relationship is the way I look at it. It's like that next one may not be that lifelong relationship you really want. So I'm glad that it didn't happen.
Right.
And I did get good advice in the beginning. Someone told me, say no to everything, say no to everything. And I took that. And so I did. I said no to everything, but then I said yes to everything. And I wrote about that as well. Like I took every interview, every meeting, every single thing I could possibly think, even in fields I never even considered would be probable or possible. I thought, well, what's it going to hurt? I'm meeting people. And this is this could be a step in a different direction.
Yeah. And it's we all, so many people, because so many people are unhappy at work, we all fantasize when we're in those spots about being able to step back, start over, have a big whiteboard, be able to create whatever you want out of it. But it is so scary.
Yeah.
Where do you even start?
And that's the problem. It took me months for my brain to get clear enough to even think about things like if you'd asked me, do you love your job? I'd be like, yes, it is awesome. I love it. I was waking up at 1:30 in the morning thinking this is perfectly fine. But even that was like, well, this is the shift I like because I can be home for my kids and I can pick them up off the bus and I can volunteer at their schools. And so if you'd asked me, I would have found the positives. But a couple of months out, you start thinking, oh, wait, I get to sleep in now till something crazy like 5.
Oh, wow.
I realized the things that I missed and that I really loved to do, I wasn't getting to do anymore. And so you start seeing, okay, it was what I wanted to do. I never would have left. Never. I would still be there today had I not been fired. So I want to be very clear about that. This was not like I was thinking it through. Nope. I'd still be there and I'd be complaining because there are things about it that I look back on and I think, wow, I didn't see those. Because like you're in it and you don't see the forest for the trees. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you called it in your article, the pivot I didn't know I needed.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't. When we're in the stew, it's kind of like, the thing about the frog in the pot of water.
Yeah.
About how the temperature keeps getting turned up and he doesn't even know it.
Mm-hmm.
And I talk to people way too often who say things like, I am dying a little bit every day.
Yeah.
And you say, well, let's talk about how you might make a change. Well, I can't do that.
No, can't do that. You need the paycheck.
Yeah, you can.
You need the stability. You need the pension.
Yeah,
whatever it is.
So one of my favorite sayings is, people of an older generation were very much in the loyalty.
Mm-hmm.
I work so hard. How could they do this to me? And one of my favorite sayings is, your company wants you until the day they don't.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to act accordingly when it comes to managing your career. And so having this ripped from you pretty much, even though you just admitted you had these blinders on,
yeah, totally.
It's just as painful as, job loss is right up there with divorce, death of a spouse. And so the wisdom you showed really in those first few weeks to just let yourself sit back and heal, or at least start to heal, despite maybe your very nature to the contrary, sounds like it was instrumental in your ability to move forward.
I hope so. I thank you for that. It's funny. My husband tells me I'm negative, and I am. I tend to see the
really?
bad.
I wouldn't have.
Well, I don't know if it's like that way. I won't be disappointed. If I can make sure, that you just be aware of the negative possibilities that are out there. But in this case, it was the opposite. He was the one okay, what are we going to do? And I'm like, it's going to be fine. I had no I just had no concern about that. I knew that something would come up. I would figure it out somehow down the line. I didn't know what that something would be. But I did feel like that there would be something out there. And I don't think I saw it at the moment that, oh, this is a positive. It'll be a new start. I'll get to have like I said, the pivot I didn't know I needed, which, by the way, I have to give credit to my friend Tasha Pinello, because she's the one who said that to me. And I'm like, that's exactly it. That's exactly what it is. But I don't think I saw it like that at the beginning. I definitely see that now in retrospect.
Yeah. So what was the first thing you said yes to?
It was like lunches and meetings and interviews and coffees.
And so were people calling you, probably worried about you?
A lot of it was, former colleagues, whether they were colleagues I worked with at the station or those that I had been competitors or colleagues at other outlets. And I mean, there were fans and followers and that sort of thing, and just an outpouring of Facebook messages that were just so nice. And, the thing about what I did, I was the morning show anchor for 15 years. That is an interesting time of day, because you think about how you are in the morning. You are raw. You are half clothed. You are uncaffeinated. You are, in your natural state. And me being in their living room every day, it's a kinship. They saw me have 2 kids. They, saw me through breast cancer. All of these things. And so there was a relationship there, even though I had obviously never met most of them. But people have a relationship with those people who spend that very personal time with you. And so, and I would hear this throughout the years, and I definitely saw it in the outpouring of messages and calls and texts that people sent. But even those who I knew very well, no one was like, oh my goodness, what are you going to do now? It wasn't this dire. It was, you know what, there's going to be great things out there. And I think that helped in my kind of attitude toward the whole thing.
So what were, you said you saw a great outpouring. What surprised you in that period right after you got the news?
A lot of it was, I didn't expect, I don't want to use the word viral, but what happened was the media got a hold of this and started contacting me.
Ah, okay.
And so I'm like, well, I've got 2 choices. I can shut up and just slink off into the sunset, which is not my way, or I can get ahead of this. And so I got ahead of it. And so I just wrote a little Facebook post. And it went crazy. It went crazy. And so that's how a lot of
what
this
was in the
information-
Facebook post?
Just, I think it started with, this is not the way I expected it to end. But essentially, I'm no longer at the station. I don't know what's next. Thank you for your years of support, and I'll let you know. And so it wasn't, negative. It wasn't boo-hoo. It was just, hey, this is what's happening. Because again, I felt like I owed that to people.
Yes.
After being in their living room for 15 years, 20 total at the station, that I needed to tell my side of it, because I wasn't sure what the other side was going to be. So that's what really kind of started the whole snowball. And from there, competitors, colleagues, people I hadn't worked with for 20 years, I heard from. And it's just, and it's a terrible situation to hear from them, but it was nice to hear how much they supported me in that time.
Yeah. So 2 things. I think really instructive in what you just said. You decided to take control of the message. And we have that choice. So when you lose your job, there's a lot of stuff that you've lost control of. And one of the ways to get that back is by managing the message. And so you chose to say, gee, this isn't the way I thought it was going to end, but for the most part, there's nothing negative about that.
Right.
But clearly there are people who, whether they are in the public eye or not, take much more of a, I can't believe this happened after all I've done for them, those blah, blah, blahs.
And I'm not saying I wasn't thinking that.
Yes.
I was absolutely thinking that.
Sure. You wouldn't be human if you didn't. But how you put yourself out there and how you position yourself will either help or detract from your ability to move forward. Because if people are like, oh my gosh, did you read that? People are not going to reach out to help you because they're like, oh, she's probably still riding the bitter train. I don't really want to hear that. But if you're positive, or at least not negative, not throwing your employer under the bus, even people back at your employer can be like, well, I'm going to help her because she's not calling us a bunch of blah, blah, blahs, at least not
Right.
out in public. And so sort of that scorched earth policy never works.
Yeah, and that's the thing. In any regard, it doesn't work. And at no point would that have helped me. This is a very small town in a big sense,
it sure
and a
is.
small industry. And so I'm certainly not going to put myself at any sort of detriment in speaking ill then or now
Yeah.
about my former employer. But I think that it is, especially as easy as it is to fire off a tweet or throw a little Facebook
Mhm.
message up there. It is hard sometimes for people to kind of rein that in, especially if they've grown up in this world of social
Yes.
media and putting
Oh, yeah.
everything out there. And so I thought about it. I thought, should I do this? And what I kind of came to the conclusion of is that at that point is all I've got right now is social media. That's the only way I can get my message out to anybody. I'm not on the air anymore. I don't know what else to
Right.
do. So this is how I'm going to use it. These are the people who liked me enough to hit like on Facebook or wherever it
Mhm.
was, Twitter, and so I thought this is my way of getting at least my side of things out.
It's fantastic. Yeah. So the second thing is, you said all these people reaching out, they're so lovey-lovey. And I'm not looking for a name here, but generally when these things happen, people who go through this will say, these people surprised me with their caring and their
Mhm.
love and their communications, but there were also some people that I didn't hear from.
Oh
or
yeah,
that I was,
and I
okay.
I could name them for you. There are like
We'll
a
do
handful.
that after we stop
Yeah,
recording.
there are a handful where I'm like, huh, that's interesting. And then it's just like if you've never been through something and then you go through it, the death of a parent or the loss of a child or a pregnancy or something like that, and then someone else goes through it, oh, I'm reaching out to that person.
Yes.
So then I do give people the benefit of the doubt and thinking, okay, well, they've never been fired or lost a job in a weird way publicly. Maybe that's why they didn't reach out. And because I do think that there's a lot to be learned once you've gone through
Sure.
the fire. But I do it has surprised me more the outpouring of support than it has those people who didn't,
Yes.
though they are out there.
Yes. You'll always remember them. And you do. I mean, those moments in life, it's almost like it freeze frames.
Mhm.
You remember where you were when it happened. You remember who was there. You remember who wasn't. I mean,
Mhm.
it's human nature. So now that we're a year into it,
Yep.
what's the biggest thing you've learned about yourself in the last year?
What's interesting is, when you, like I said, fifth grade Kathrine was, I want to be a TV news anchor. That's what I wanted to be. And then I was. It's awesome. I reached my goal. I didn't have the next step. So what I have realized is what that next step is. And I don't even really know what that next step is, but what I do know that it involves is people. And what I found is, you think of the word anchor. You are anchored to the desk. I never left the station. And that's by design. You aspire to
makes
that
sense.
role so you're not out in the heat and the cold and the snow and the rain.
Right.
Well, believe me, I'm thankful for that more often than I'm not. But what I'm finding is in my role now with the Inquirer, I'm out every day talking to people about good stories.
What are you doing at the Inquirer? Tell us about your new role.
I'm doing
This is the
Facebook
Cincinnati
Live.
Inquirer.
Yep.
Okay.
My technical title is the Family Forward Reporter.
Okay.
And what that means is it's just I'm finding stories interesting to those in families. That could be families with young kids, older kids,
Okay.
aging parents, whatever it is, whatever type of, maybe no kids at all, whatever type of family, whatever that means to you. And what that means for me on a day-to-day basis is I do a Facebook Live for them where I talk about some headlines and then I interview somebody. I'm usually on site somewhere, talking to somebody about something great that's going on. And
And
that's
it's all positive?
pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
And that's the beauty of
Isn't
it.
that nice?
It's
Oh, what a
wonderful.
great-
This
what a-
city has so many great stories to tell.
Yes.
And so often, what's the knock on the news that we hear all the time? Oh, it's so
Ugh.
negative. It's violent. And it can be. It can. But I don't have to deal with that. And so the stories that I get to tell sometimes don't have a place necessarily in a newscast or on a website. But they're great people stories.
And so that is on the Cincinnati Inquirer's Facebook page?
That's exactly
It's
right.
called Families Forward?
My title is Family Forward, but the Facebook Live is just every day at 10, well, Monday through Thursday at 10. It's live every day from somewhere.
And you go out and find the stories?
I do. And what's interesting is now they're coming to me, which is great.
Yeah.
And, people are like, oh, you should do this or you should do that. And,
So
meeting
tell us
new
how you got
people.
this job. How'd you get it?
Well, it's I just happened to it. This all goes back to you never know when you're on a job interview. That's what I keep telling
Absolutely.
people who are still in the business or those in any industry looking to maybe at some point eventually do something else. I tell them every single day, every person you meet could be somebody who puts you in contact with your next step. And that's exactly what happened this time. Michael Perry, who is with the Cincinnati Enquirer, he was way back when I used to cover sports.
Oh my
He and I
gosh.
covered sports together 20 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
And I knew he had left for PR and he'd come back to the Enquirer. And he called me up one day and was like, look, let's go to lunch. I want to throw some things at you and see what you think. And this is what he said. He's like, you can do a Facebook Live every day. And I was like, wow. That's like the best of all the things that I like. I like talking, obviously. I love news. I like telling good stories. I like finding good stories and, meeting people. So that's kind of how this whole thing started. And it has worked out well for the Enquirer, and it's worked out great for me too.
So let's go back. The day that this happened was what? What was the day that you were let go?
July 30th or 30th. I think it was the 31st.
Okay, so okay.
My husband will know exactly.
Okay. He
to the
remembers where he
time.
was
Yes.
when he got the call.
Yes, exactly.
Let's step back one day prior.
Okay.
Okay. You have no idea this is coming.
Yeah.
Michael Perry calls you and says, hey, I've got this idea.
I never would have done it.
Wouldn't have.
Never
Okay.
would have done it.
Interesting.
And I would have had the blinders on.
Yep.
Believing, oh, that's not what I need. Like, this is what I want to do. This is the thing I want to do. And again, this job didn't exist before I took it. Like it didn't exist. So it's not like I could have said, you know what I want to do? This job over here.
Right.
No, it was not there. And so, and that's what I taught a class for several years at UC in the e-media department. And I would tell those kids, I keep calling them kids. I would like to say students, but they're kids to me. I would tell the students, I would love to tell you what job you're going to get, but they probably don't exist.
Exactly.
I mean, even juniors and seniors, that probably doesn't exist, at least the one you're going to have 5 years from now.
Right.
So this is a great example of that. And in fact, this was a lesson for them. I got fired mid-semester. So it was a really interesting, or right before the semester started. And so I talked about it in class because it's like, well, this is where the class was media issues and ethics. This is an issue. This is a definite issue in this industry.
Wow. That undoubtedly was an incredibly powerful class session because, maybe they've seen that happen to their parents. But here you are, you're on TV, you've had a great career, you're in here talking, and all of a sudden, it's over.
Mm-hmm.
And to learn that at that age is incredibly powerful.
And we talked just prior to this, I do believe that generation, up through the millennials even, but those 20 to 40s, they get that a lifelong, I'm going to stay in the same job forever and ever and ever. That doesn't exist. I think they've got their head on a swivel a little more than the rest of us do.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. Yes, head on a swivel. Love that. Yes, but in general, I always say that, that generation, they're like, we want, I want my work to matter. I want, I want a life. And we scoff at them because they're like, oh, you haven't suffered enough. You have to be miserable and cry in the car on the way to work for 30 years.
Yeah,
then let's talk about that.
The pep talk I would give myself down this one long hallway. I'm like, I can do this today. I got this.
Oh, yeah. And I think they're right.
They're absolutely right.
This whole concept of, wait a minute, so you would graduate from college and go work for a company and try to hang on there for 30, 40 years? What?
Yeah.
Why would you do that?
Yeah. Well, and your perspective changes. I mean, and obviously when you start talking about money, that's a big giant decision you have to make. But now on the outside of this, I would trade money for happiness. I would much rather be happy. And my husband went through a similar situation 10 or so years ago. He chose to leave and go out on his own, but I saw the change in him. I saw the change from, he's coming home like all nervous and kind of pent up to, hey, I get home when I want to get home. And I'm told that, I don't know how, but I'm much nicer now. Perhaps it's getting sleep. I don't know.
Isn't
but my
that funny?
Kids and my husband don't tell me I'm a whole lot nicer.
Yeah. I hear that a lot as well from clients, that I didn't realize how difficult I was to live with or be around, even though my spouse probably told me. Often,
but they're always wrong.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just under a lot of pressure, but making that change, it is one of the most difficult things that you have to do. And most people, there was some was a study done several years ago on people who had been severed from a job involuntarily.
Mhm.
That it was some number in the 90% of people who ended up better off and happier. And
Yeah.
anytime you get something in the
Yeah,
90%,
it's pretty
you got to
good.
pay attention to that.
Well, and I mean, my information's only anecdotal, but I know I was shocked by in the like 2 weeks after I got fired, how many people, both that I did not know, that would come up to me at Target or would send me an email, or the people I actually did know that I'd known for years who were like, yeah, you know what, I got fired like 3 times. Like it had happened to so many people
Yep.
so frequently. It was a weird way to make me feel better.
Yeah.
And it is kind of comforting to know, okay, this happens to everybody. And two, I cannot tell you how many of them said, I'm so much happier now. I'm so
Yep.
much Not one person said, yep, that was the end. It never got better from there.
Yep.
Everybody was happier on the
Yeah.
back end.
Yeah. I think what keeps people, and probably would have kept you from making a change, let's say you got to the point where you were miserable, was it was hard to know what to do next.
Exactly.
What would you do if
I
you
don't
weren't
know.
an anchor?
I don't know. And that was I still don't really know. You know what I mean? Like I'm kind of like feeling this whole thing out. But yeah, when you've had that inkling in your head since you were a little kid, this is what I want to do. And I don't know what it took me a long time to figure out what was next.
You were forced to figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what else are you doing besides Inquirer and Facebook?
Well, I just actually this week started a website with my former co-anchor Chris Riva. It's called Let's Go Cincy. It is another way to share great stories of, we like to say, sharing the greatest things about Greater Cincinnati. So we're working together doing that, which has been a blast. And in addition to that, I've got, what the Inquirer's done for me. It's been so wonderful. I work part-time there, and they've allowed me to do freelance work for, different organizations and places around town, which has been great.
Yeah.
Because it, helps me make a little extra money, keeps me current, and I get to like kind of dip my hands in a lot of pots. It's been a lot of fun to do.
Yeah, that's great. So complete the sentence.
Okay.
I'm at my best when.
Okay. This might be a complex sentence.
Okay.
Perhaps a run-on
Compound,
sentence.
yes.
Okay.
Run on, yeah.
Okay. Okay. I am at my best when I am sleeping 7 hours,
Okay.
relatively caffeinated, and telling great stories.
So when you get up at 1:30, what's bedtime look like?
That's the problem.
I always want to know that.
That's the problem. I was going to bed at like 10.
What?
I would take a nap in the middle of the day. But
Okay.
what that meant was I was constantly rushing somewhere, rushing to get home, rushing to go to sleep, rushing to get up, to get the kids off the bus. Got to go take this kid this way, and I got to make dinner. And like it just was this constant rush, and I didn't realize it. And back to that Fitbit, this is interesting. So in the 2 weeks after I got fired, you can see your heart rate, you can see your sleep pattern. My sleep went from like this crazy, like sometimes it wouldn't even register because I never got into deep sleep, to this like, hey, look at me, I'm sleeping like a normal person. So that was really interesting to see the
I need my
physiological
sleep.
changes.
Oh my gosh. I
Yeah.
cannot imagine. My kids growing up, I was a sleep sheriff. Because I'm like, sleep, get some more sleep, get some more sleep. And now one of them actually said to me, and they're in their 20s recently, Mom, sleep's really important. I'm like, really?
Is it now?
Where'd you hear that? I love it when they come back and, they're like,
Just proves you're right.
Yeah, we know that. A typical life expectancy
Mm-hmm.
of an American is 78.6 years. You can go ahead and do your own math in terms of how many years you have left.
Yeah.
What do you want your most profound impact in your world to be over the next fill in the blank number of years?
Well, I think that it's independent children. I'm a big, healthy and independent children. I can't really help the healthy part other than the food and the sleep. Back to
Yes.
that. But the ability for them to be on their own, not just in like a career capacity. I'd love it if they ended up doing something for themselves, because I feel like, especially in this day and age that we're in now, it's the only surefire thing, which is a really unusual thing because you control how much you work and how hard you work. But just to be able to be their own people in whatever capacity that is.
And how old are they now?
15 and 13.
Okay, those are
Almost
fun
done.
years.
I'm almost done with them. You're never done with them, are you?
No, you're never done. No, you aren't. Someday when you're gone and
Mhm.
people are talking about you, how do you hope they'd complete this sentence? The most important thing Kathrine did in her life was,
I think make me laugh. I do tend to, even in terrible situations, like, stressful situations. that's my way of de-stressing is joking. But sometimes, and I remember having a conversation with a boss about this. She's like, all people do is come over and stand at your desk and complain and laugh. And I said, okay, but you
Was
understand.
that a criticism?
It
Was
was.
that
It was
I
a
hate
criticism.
that.
But I said, but look, I know that's the way it looks. I said, but when they leave, it's all out and now they can go about their days. So you have to vent. No one goes to work and is like, I love every single thing about this. It's rainbows and puppies, So you have to vent. And I know it was kind of probably a rather public venting because it was in the middle of our newsroom. But she saw and she's like, oh, okay. Like it kind of resonated. And I do think that there's something, I was a sounding board of sorts. And hopefully they left laughing. And that's what I'd like to leave people with.
Yes. There is such power in that. So when if you could blue sky whiteboard your next 10 years or so, what's something is there something that you always imagined yourself doing or thought might be fun to do, but never really gave yourself permission to really think about that maybe it's creeping in again?
Well, I love to write. And the weird thing, I'm a word person, I'm a grammar person, but the writing in television is very different. It's very short and succinct and everything is short, next thing. And I realize in working with the Inquirer now that I really do like to write. I really like it. And I think that I'm rusty at it because it's been a while since you've written in a style or since I've written in a style that's digital and print friendly. But yeah, that's what I love to do. And that's what I'd like to do more of.
Book, a blog, an article?
I don't know. I think that, this website's going to maybe be part of that. But yeah, I mean, who knows? I don't know that I've got enough information up in my head to do a book, but I'd love to. I think that's part of the process is fleshing all that out. That's the thing. Like I feel about that the same way I felt right after getting fired. It's like, well, I've never thought about it. Well, I don't know what to think about it. And it takes a while for at least my brain to process all that information and figure out, well, is there something there? What else is there? And what will my story be?
Yes. Well, it's still being written.
Yeah.
Are you ready to play 2 questions, one deep and one shallow?
Yes.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right. You're standing in front of a group of 22-year-olds who say to you, I want my work life to matter. What advice do you give them?
I want my work life to matter. I would say find a job you love regardless of salary. I think that too often, especially with student loan debt, kids graduate and they're like, well, I got $100,000 in student loan debt. I got to get a job right now and it's got to pay X number of dollars. I've never known anybody who has loved a job because of the money and then the rest of it fall into place. Hopefully you find a job where there's a little of both and maybe a lot of the liking the job and hopefully the money's there as well. But I think that going back to just what we said before about happiness being more important than money, you still have to have money. Listen, I understand that completely, but it's amazing how much more happy you can be with a little less money and a little less stress.
Yes, we convince ourselves we need a lot more than we do.
Absolutely.
And yeah, that takes us down the wrong path. All right, are you ready to play? 2 questions, one deep and one shallow?
Absolutely.
Let's go shallow first.
Okay.
All right.
My favorite.
What's the most embarrassing thing you've ever worn?
That I've ever worn. It's funny. I saw 2 of them on the way in here. Fanny packs. Now they're back. So I guess they're not so embarrassing. But yeah, fanny packs, like, yeah.
That's when you're getting old, when stuff comes like back around.
Yeah. And especially when it's coming back a second time. That's dangerous. That's dangerous. On the air, though, I did have a really bad short haircut for a super long time. A long time.
And no one ever told you. What was it? Was probably
in
style
kind of
then.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
I'm going to tell myself that anyway.
Yeah, I just, I remember back in the early 80s when I started in the job market or in the workforce, the floppy bow ties.
Oh, yeah. I remember the floppy bow ties.
When it was like, let me look like a man, except it's going to be a skirt instead of pants and a floppy bow tie instead of a straight down one. Lots of shoulder pads. Bad. All right, deep. What's it mean to have a good life?
Well, I think now my answer is that, work, home life balance, and really leaning more toward home life than anything. And maybe it's because my kids are of a certain age. You have 8th grade and 10th grade. We're in a transition time and they're both girls. So that's part of it. But I don't know that I would have ever said, well, it's money. Absolutely. I don't think that ever would have been my answer. But now it is much more, that pendulum has swung completely to being happy at home. And that goes with a relationship with your significant other, your kids, your extended family, your friends, your neighbors, whatever it might be.
Yes, thank you. Well, thank you for sharing your story.
Oh, I'm so glad. Thank you for
having me.
me.
I think that it's going to be very helpful for people to see that everybody we see walking down the street is dealing with something. And this is one of those things that some of the brightest, most talented, most successful people have dealt with. It has nothing to do with how capable you are or what your potential is, what your possibilities are. It's just a human experience that we all go through.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing your journey. I think it's going to help some other people get through theirs.
I hope so. Those first 2 weeks are rough, like you said.
Yes.
But hopefully you'll listen to this on like week 3, and then you'll, it's smooth sailing after that.
Yeah. And you can't, those first couple bad weeks, you got to go through them.
Yeah.
You can't go around them.
It's like anything else.
Yes, it is.
Absolutely.
It
you don't
is.
know how good it can get till you know how bad it is.
Right. And it's, I always say, that you don't want to do anything stupid in those first 2 weeks, like, stalk
Take
your
a
old
job.
boss, take a bad job. There's all kinds of ways for it to go south.
Yeah.
And just pulling yourself back and taking the time to sit back and breathe is the kindest thing you can do for yourself. And it's also extremely helpful in helping you prepare for what's next, because there is a what's next.
There's always a what's next.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed meeting the Evolved Careerist on today's episode, well, we've got a lot more lined up for you. Subscribe, tell your friends, rate us and write a review. And of course, follow us on social media. But if you're interested in learning more about how you can evolve your career, you can contact us through theevolvedcareer.com or thebaukegroup.com, and that's Bauke. Do you know somebody who'd be a great guest, who has a great career story to tell? Or do you think you qualify? Then email me. My email address is in the podcast description. Until next time, here's to your career happiness.